Fantastic show, double standard. We're seeing some of that develop, and horrific stuff. Anyone using the U.S. mail or any other means to deliver
everybody safe. How about this? People would say what they want. Leave people alone in restaurants and grocery stores and when they're with their families. Fight at the ballot box. Vote for whoever you want. I hope it's Republican, but vote for who you want.
Amen. Sean, great show tonight.
All right, have a good show.
All right, I'm Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle from Washington, and this is a Fox News alert.
Those engaged in the political arena must stop treating political opponents as being morally defective. Have to do that. The language of moral condemnation and destructive routine, these are arguments and disagreements that have to stop. No one should carelessly compare political opponents to historical villains, which is done often, it's done all the time. Got to stop.
Well, that was President Trump earlier tonight addressing the news of explosive devices sent to the homes or offices of Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Eric Holder, George Soros, Maxine Waters, and one that was addressed to John Brennan but ended up somehow at CNN. Now, we still don't know anything about who is behind these undetonated bombs or what their possible motives could be. But, of course, that didn't stop the media from cracking the case.
If you look at who they've targeted so far, it's almost like they're following Donald Trump's Twitter feed.
You know, we are in an era now where violence seems to have license by the President of the United States.
But the president certainly has encouraged this kind of rhetoric.
This is what happened when the president calls you the enemy of the people. Why did CNN get the bomb?
You know, so to be Sherlock Holmes.
And the Obamas. Fox News hasn't gotten a bomb yet. But
that sounds almost like wish casting there, Sonny. Well, look, this might be politically motivated. After all, only Democrats receive the packages. But let's not go pointing fingers until we have all the details. Now, what exactly do we know tonight? We thought would go to actually people who report and who know something. Fox News Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is here. Catherine, where are we at this hour?
Well, thanks, Laura. Within the last hour, the FBI confirming 2 more packages, both addressed to Congresswoman Maxine Waters, bringing the total tonight to 7. Earlier today, FBI Director Christopher Wray issued this statement asking for the public's help, saying no piece of information is too small and warning that more packages may be out there. Director Wray said each package used a large manila envelope with bubble wrap, 6 forever stamps with the same return address, using the wrong spelling for Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, as well as computer-printed address labels. A former federal investigator tells Fox that such printers can embed identification codes into the actual print. They can link the packages and, in some cases, trace the printer. As you mentioned, the first package to billionaire Democrat donor George Soros arrived on Monday, followed by former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, former President Barack Obama, former CIA Director John Brennan, that was delivered to CNN, and former Attorney General Eric Holder. The Secret Service confirmed its routine mail screening intercepted both of the packages, and they're working directly tonight with the FBI, ATF, and the postal inspectors as part of the JTTF, that's the Joint Terrorism Task Force. In his first public comments after the bomb scare, Brennan told an audience in Texas that President Trump is to blame for the political climate.
Trump too often has helped to incite some of these feelings of anger, if not violence, when he points to acts of violence or also talks about, swinging at somebody from the press.
And Brennan said he hoped the president's statement condemning the pipe bombs marked a turning point. It's important to note that no suspect, no motive or political agenda has been publicly linked by the FBI to these devices, Laura.
And Catherine, the work of the Secret Service at the Clintons' home in Chappaqua, that was critical in this case, was it not?
It was. What's happened sort of in the post-9/11 world is that they have these off-site screening facilities. And in the case of Hillary Clinton and also Barack Obama, they intercepted the packages before they even got to the homes. So nobody, the intended recipient, never touched anything that was dangerous.
And they've already concluded this is obviously all sent by the same person or group of people who were responsible.
All the devices and the packaging have the same hallmarks, and they are investigating it. The working theory is that it was a single individual or a single group.
Catherine, thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much for coming in tonight. And so how sophisticated were these devices, and why didn't any of them actually detonate? We wanted to speak to some experts on the subject, and Jimmy Oxley is a professor and explosives expert. She aided in the investigations into the '93 World Trade Center bombing and the 2005 London bombings. And Republican Rick Crawford is a member of the House Intel Committee and previously served as an explosive ordnance disposal technician for the 4 years he was in the U.S. Army. Thank you both for being here. Jimmy, I want to start with you. Having seen the pictures of these devices, how operational do they appear?
Well, what we've seen is some x-rays, and they look like they would be operational. It's typical for EOD, explosive ordnance disposal, to be able to x-ray packages. They do that first to ensure that there is a device if you have a suspicious package, and then to take a look at where the initiation system is and how it works. In this case, we're told there's a digital clock as part of the device.
And I want to go to you, Congressman Crawford. Bob Baer, former CIA operative, was on CNN tonight, and he made a comment about the device. Let's watch.
They probably weren't meant to go off. The worst kind of bomb you can send in the mail is a pipe bomb. They're easily discoverable. People are going to pick them up. They make no, hand addressed and the rest of it. It makes no sense.
Do you agree with his analysis?
Absolutely. I think it was probably designed to get attention. It was designed to be caught, and while it may be a device that could function, I think it was designed more than anything to strike fear in the hearts of those people who they were intended to target, not necessarily to kill them.
Professor, back to you. Tracing the individual, they believe an individual, as Catherine Herridge said, is responsible for this, one individual. Tracing the material back to that individual, it was so hard in the case of the Unabomber. Huge damage, obviously, horrific damage done at his hands. Took years and years. Why might this be different?
Well, the Unabomber took years and years because his bombings were spread out over years, and he actually had a hiatus from bombing for a number of years, if you remember that case. He was quite an experimentalist and tried different signatures. This particular person or group has already been linked to 7 bombs in 3 days. And the post office has a lot better tracking facilities. Let's face it, these were caught before they got to the intended victims, partly because the post office has certain precautions in place. Now they can trace it back to an area and start looking where the components, whether they be chemical components or physical components like the pipe itself, where those were purchased.
And Congressman, it was reported earlier today that the post office, though, wasn't used, that there was a courier used at the CNN drop for this particular envelope. So the post office wasn't, the stamps weren't marked. They weren't actually stamped. Does that make it more difficult, less difficult? Same thing with the Soros mailbox, or wherever they left it at Soros. Apparently, maybe in Chappaqua as well. So if it wasn't the post office, security cameras and then the actual individual materials?
Yeah, I think what you have is security protocols. Anytime you have any kind of a commercial operation like CNN, they're going to have a high rigid security protocols. Certainly, a high-profile individual like George Soros would have security protocols that would catch that kind of thing. But the other thing, the comparison about the Unabomber and how long that took, the digital footprint is so much more pronounced today than it was when the Unabomber was active. And so not only that, in this post 9/11 era, our bomb techs have gotten so much better in the technical exploitation of intelligence. And so we've seen over the last several years, almost 2 decades now, that we've been engaged in counter-IED operations. Our sophistication as bomb techs has improved dramatically so that we can go and attack the network quickly and identify those perpetrators, cut off their supply, and be able to bring them to justice in a much more expeditious manner. And so I think you'll see this resolved much, much quicker than you would have in an incident like, for example, the Unabomber.
Now, Professor, if you were profiling this case, what do you think the hallmarks are here of who might be behind this, given the way this device was assembled and the targets that obviously were chosen?
Well, that's not really my expertise to talk about profiling, but usually bombs are by somebody that is either disgruntled, evil, or just plain crazy. It's hard to say what combination this is. I'm sure there's much speculation on that point. But as I said, that's...
Congressman, member of the House Intel Committee, obviously members of Congress are taking this very seriously. The White House near immediate condemnation. Your sense from the House Intel Committee's perspective tonight?
Well, immediately, I agree. Condemnation on this. This is a condemnable act, regardless of who the perpetrator is. The good news is the resources we have available to go after the perpetrator or perpetrators, as the case may be, in that we have a huge database. And I will say this, as a former bomb tech, I know what the reporting protocols are, and I know that the FBI has a great expertise, and the intelligence community has great expertise in being able to go after and exploit that intelligence and find out who these people are. And there's a big digital footprint here that they might not even be aware of, but I can tell you this, that these experts are aware of it, and they'll find the perpetrator very quickly, and I think we'll be surprised to see how quick they're brought to justice in a case like this.
Well, fantastic. Thank you both for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. And I want to bring in former Secret Service agent Dan Bongino. Dan, thanks for being here. How does the agency address the threats like these, and how much a part of the investigatory process will they be going forward?
Well, this is interesting, Laura. The Secret Service has an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, with the FBI when an attack or an attempted attack like this actually happens, and it's for obvious reasons. If an attack like this happens, the Secret Service typically doesn't conduct the investigation. What they do is they'll secure the crime scene, in this case the mail facility, and the FBI will come in and do the investigation. The reason being, you don't want the Secret Service investigating it if there were a potential hole in their security plan, which, by the way, there was not in this case. The Secret Service did everything by the numbers. They did a fantastic job. They acted wonderfully in this case. But the FBI will take over from this point. They just secure the crime scene, the Secret Service. But Dan, one more thing, Laura.
Yeah, go ahead.
They will be kept informed, obviously, about the status of the investigation in case there's an ongoing threat.
Dan, we had ricin attacks just back in September, I believe. Mattis and former Chief of Naval Operations both received. You've had threats. They got the powder going to the Trump kids. Even here at Fox some years ago, including myself, we received these envelopes with harmless powder in the mail. But it's meant to scare you. It's meant to frighten you. The fact that this has become political this fast, and I want to play something that Hillary Clinton said earlier today for you and get your reaction. Let's watch.
It's a time of deep divisions, and we have to do everything we can to bring our country together. We also have to elect candidates who will try to do the same.
You cannot be civil with a political party that wants to destroy what you stand for, what you care about.
Yeah, it's obviously a flashback at the end to what she said recently about, can't be civil with certain people. So the finger's pointing at Trump all day long on the other networks, which I found disgusting, continued through the night. Yet we had Holder, Kickham, Hillary, Booker, Maxine Waters, all at different points in time, and Joe Biden, of course, take him behind the barn or whatever he said years ago. I mean, it's rough and tumble world of politics. But the idea that this is now, they're tagging Donald Trump with this, Jeff Zucker at CNN, obviously his network involved today with the, with the envelope going there, and it's horrible. But Jeff Zucker, really? That's where you want to go now?
Yeah, it's gross. It's disgusting. Matter of fact, I remember doing commentary on this network during the really horrific shooting in the baseball field. Every commentator on this network going out of their way to make sure, me included, by the way, even on my own show, that the person who did that, Bernie Sanders, although he was a supporter, had no responsibility for that whatsoever. None. That person was responsible for their own actions. And yet, in an incident like today, Laura, well, let's be clear. We have no evidence whatsoever about who this person was yet. That's been released publicly. I'm sure the FBI is working on it. None that indicate a motive. Zero. And yet we have irresponsible, gross coverage out there, people jumping to conclusions, claiming they have some kind of inside information about a motive and some kind of link to Donald Trump. I mean, this is really grotesque. There's no place for this. And that clip you played on Hillary sums it all up. Just a week ago, she was talking about uncivil treatment of Republicans being almost mandatory, and now all of a sudden she's the peacemaker. We just had one of her advisors on the network yesterday defending, confronting, in some cases aggressively, Republicans out in public places. I mean, listen, there is no place for violence in politics, period, full stop, nothing further needed. But there is a place in politics to call out frauds. And if you haven't been on that side of nonviolent intervention the entire time, don't jump in the game now and try to blame it on Donald Trump.
After the president came out and condemned, obviously, these horrible, bomb attacks, would-be bomb attacks, CNN had a panel. Various people came out. It was not enough for them. You'll be surprised to hear. I'm sure, Dan, let's watch.
I thought it was the absolute bare minimum that the American people could expect from the president to say, given the circumstances.
What leaves me wanting, like Carrie, is you find yourself saying, I just wish he could have said some other things.
I think it would have behooved him to be a little bit more complete in his statement.
When you think about this.
Next. Your reaction, Dan.
A little more. What else does she want? Did she want him to call for the guillotine? He couldn't have been more. The full force, the full extent of the United States government will be dedicated to bringing these people to justice. What else do they want? The president can do no right, Laura, in their eyes. There is nothing he can say and nothing he can do to get, in their eyes, to get him right with them on the left. And you know what? They all insulate each other. They speak to themselves in a bubble. See, we don't have that luxury here on this network. You say anything even remotely out of the media narrative, you're on Twitter all day with these attack sites on this network. Yet over there, they get away with whatever they want. They say whatever they want, even though they have absolutely no evidence, zero, what the motive was in this case.
Dan, you know what they're also doing, which I saw all throughout the day? They're trying to tie these horrific letters, bomb letters, to the overall conservative populist ideology. So, in other words, during this closing weeks of the campaign, now they don't really think Donald Trump should be aggressive campaigning. They don't, and Jake Tapper kind of spoke to this about the criticism of Waters and John Brennan. Let's watch.
Well, with the exception of the violence part of it, I don't know that it's just the far right. I think it's just a lot of Republicans. We hear Republicans on Capitol Hill, congressmen talking about Soros, talking about John Brennan as he should be the focus. It's not just the fringe anymore. This is now mainstream Republican thought.
So you can't talk about George Soros, or you're basically, in some way kind of responsible for this atmosphere.
Laura, this is a fundamental misunderstanding of conservative ideology by people who don't understand it. We believe in big R, God-given rights, not state-sanctioned rights. They may protect your rights, but these are rights granted by God for everyone. Liberals, conservatives, even communists, God-given rights. That is a fundamental misunderstanding and a very irresponsible comment by a guy who should know better. He's usually a little more fair than that. That is an outrageous comment. There is nobody I know who would be, you'd be kicked off this network immediately, right. And you and I both know it if you got off the air, on the air advocating violence. That is nonsense.
And by the way, remember in 2012, the Democrats couldn't stop talking about the Koch brothers. Remember old Harry Reid on the Senate floor? I mean, they pick their targets to vilify, and it's okay when they're doing it and they're winning. But when Republicans are starting to make a political comeback, you can't talk about these issues anymore. It's just crazy.
Yeah, Mitt Romney didn't pay his taxes, remember? And then they asked Harry Reid about it. He says, well, we won, didn't we? I mean, that's their morals right there.
Yeah, bingo. Dan, thanks so much. And coming up, the flame out of the Democrats' newest stars. That's the focus of tonight's angle when we return. The flame out of the Democrats' newest stars. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Over the last few months, the media have anointed liberals like Florida gubernatorial candidate Andrew Gillum, Georgia gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams, and Texas senatorial candidate Beto O'Rourke as Democratic superstars to watch.
What is the read down there on the competitiveness of this race? I mean, Abrams is a star in the Democratic Party.
Gillum brings something. He brings energy, brings passion. He's a star.
And some of these candidates like Beto and Gillum is that not only do you get the star power, you get the youth.
I love you too. Thank you all.
You're a rock star.
No, there's just so many great people.
But in these final weeks of campaigning, we're learning more about all three candidates that should give all the voters in their respective states reason to question the nonstop hype. Let's start with Andrew Gillum. Text messages reveal that the Tallahassee mayor accepted a hotel room, tours, and tickets to the Broadway show Hamilton from real estate developers without ever disclosing the gifts. Only those developers were undercover FBI agents, and the developers had been in touch with Mayor Gillum about a real estate project in Tallahassee. His opponent, Ron DeSantis, Republican, confronted him with all of this at their debate on Sunday.
The question is, did you pay for the Hamilton ticket or did the undercover FBI agent pay for the Hamilton ticket?
I'm a hardworking person. I know that may not fit your description of what you think people like me do, but I worked hard for everything that I've gotten in my life, and I don't need anybody handing me anything for free.
Well, Gillum tried a different answer with Chuck Todd yesterday.
What Florida voters need to know about me is that for 15 years, I've served honorably, respectably, and have served my community without so much as a stain on my record or on my name.
Whatever his respectably, he's spinning, and badly. In text messages just released by Gillum's lobbyist friend, he's told clearly on August 10th of 2016 that Mike Miller, the undercover FBI agent, and the crew have tickets for us for Hamilton tonight at 8 p.m. Awesome news, Gillum texted in response. Now, whether his brother gave him the ticket or not, he knew the source of the ticket, a supposed developer who needed his help. Now, this is why the state of Florida's Ethics Commission has investigated Gillum. The probe remains open, and the Democrats' Florida star seems to be falling. Tonight, at his second and last debate against DeSantis, Gillum was pressed on the issue, and things got hot.
He wants you to believe that he's not under investigation. Why would an undercover FBI agent posing as a contractor give him a $1,000 ticket to Hamilton?
But I take responsibility for not having asked more questions. But let me tell you, I'm running for governor. In the state of Florida, we got a lot of issues. In fact, we got 99 issues, and Hamilton ain't one of them.
Nice try, Andy. But I'd like to have been in the room where it happened. Now, I suggest that Gillum moves to San Francisco, where his views and his style of politics would fit perfectly. Now, let's move on to the governor's race in Georgia, where this video footage of gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams surfaced. Now, it shows her and others on the steps of the Georgia Capitol burning the state flag in protest. It was 1992. Now, Abrams sought to explain her flag torching this way.
26 years ago, as a college freshman, I, along with many other Georgians, including the governor of Georgia, were deeply disturbed by the racial divisiveness that was embedded in the state flag with that Confederate symbol.
Now, that may be true, but the governor of Georgia at the time did not set the flag on fire on the Capitol steps. He worked through the legislature to amend the flag, change it, and remove the Confederate symbols that people found offensive. So, does a candidate for governor consider it right to simply destroy public images or symbols that individuals find offensive, some individuals? That's a question that the people of Georgia will have to answer. And then there is Super Beto. Yes, some street artist has tried to depict O'Rourke, whose real name is Robert Francis, as some sort of superhero. But his actions belie the designation. Back in 1998, when the Texas senatorial candidate was 26, he was drinking, under the influence, driving, and he struck another car and attempted to flee the accident. Well, since then, he's tried to soft-pedal the arrest.
I did not try to leave the scene of the accident, though driving drunk, which I did, is a terrible mistake for which there is no excuse or justification or defense, and I will not try to provide one.
Well, you should also not try to excuse yourself from attempting to leave the scene of an accident when that was clearly your intention. Now, as the arresting officer wrote in a police report at the time, quote, the driver attempted to leave the accident but was stopped by the witness. Nice try, Superman. And I haven't even mentioned Beto's 1995 burglary charges for breaking into the University of Texas at El Paso or this heinous commercial.
There's nobody my Beto compares to, like JFK with a $10 hairdo. Hey, Ted Cruz, you better watch your back.
Okay, more like leader of the hacks. As voters head to the polls, it would serve them well to see through the liberal media pixie dust about all of these so-called Democrat superstars. Who these people really are? Well, check it out. And more importantly, what they believe in. Open borders, higher taxes, government-run health care, gun control, and more regulations on business. Also remember that when you look at stars, you're actually seeing the light reflected from a star that is actually already burned out. Kind of like what the economy will be like if these three get into power. And that's the angle. Visitors to the Magic Kingdom are leaving something behind that has Disney pretty upset. Raymond Arroyo has the gory details in our Seen and Unseen segment. Next.
Admiral Burov holds a Russian president hostage. We've been ordered to rescue him.
It's the most aggressive military buildup in history.
Go, go, go! You are authorized to protect your crew.
Battle readiness. We're going to DEFCON 1.
Hunter Killer, rated R, in theaters Friday. When did it become okay for men to be lazier, softer, weaker? Get Ageless Male with ingredients that promote free testosterone, muscle size with workouts, and your libido. Get back to greatness with Ageless Male.
I used to fight depression with medications. Then, my doctor prescribed NeuroStar.
NeuroStar is an FDA-cleared therapy that helps activate the natural function of the brain. It should not be used in patients with certain metal or devices in or...
It's now time for our Seen and Unseen segment where we explore some of the big cultural stories of the day. On the docket tonight, new ghosts, thieves and sinners. Well, it seems appropriate 1 week from Halloween. Joining us with more, Raymond Arroyo, Fox News contributor, New York Times bestselling author of the Will Wilder series. Raymond, let's get a start with the ghoulish revelation out of the happiest place on earth.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Well, they have something called a Code V. That's when a visitor to Disney World vomits. They have a Code U, which is when someone urinates. Well, there's another code. It's called the HEPA cleanup, and that's when they use the HEPA filter on the vacuum cleaner to pick up human remains, people scattering ashes in the Magic Kingdom. A new Wall Street Journal story. Apparently, this is a trend, Laura. And they talked to a woman who dropped her father on Main Street and her brother in Epcot. Thank goodness nobody liked the Animal Kingdom or the other parks. But can you imagine? I realize they want to keep the memories alive. It's a place of happiness where you were with the whole family. But do you really want your relatives spending all eternity with the crowds and the heat and being stomped and the food dropped on?
I'm just glad it's not on one of those big, chicken legs.
You like the turkey legs. Now, where do you think, in all the places of Disneyland or Disney World, is the most favorite spot to drop the remains of Grandma?
Okay.
The Haunted Mansion, Laura.
Oh, I love the Haunted Mansion.
In the Haunted Mansion,
that's my favorite.
of all places, there are extra ghosts being added all the time, apparently. Here's what they do. You know, we've been on these rides where they will say, we're experiencing technical difficulties. Your ride will continue in a moment. You know what they're doing? They found a pile of ash remains. They stop the ride, vacuum it up, and then it continues. That's what they do. That's what the Wall Street Journal reported.
Oh, I want to see that story. I don't even believe it.
So now, in addition to the bacteria on the rails and inside the rides, I now have to worry about human remains.
Raymond, it's your time to admit. How many times have you been to Disney? Pray tell.
Oh, probably 40-something times.
Oh, you're kidding
I'm sorry.
That's an illness.
Here's what I feel. If you have a relative you love, don't drop them in the lagoon at the Pirates of the Caribbean. When they sing Yo-Ho, Yo-Ho, A Pirate's Life for Me, they didn't mean for all eternity. It's just for the ride. Leave the poor people
I just want my
alone.
ashes scattered over the Pentagon.
Granny and Splash Mountain is not part of the lyric.
The Pentagon, maybe. All right. With the midterms around the corner, I guess the dirty tricks would be expected. Now, you found one in the 9th District of Delaware?
Yes.
What is that?
This is a state rep, a Democratic state rep. Her name is Monique Johns.
Yeah.
Now, the Republican who has the seat currently, Representative Kevin Hensley, we have video of this. Here's Hensley. He goes to the door. He puts his pamphlet in the door of one of the people in his district. Well, no sooner does Hensley step away than Monique Johns shows up. Now, she is the contender for this.
There she goes.
Here she comes. Watch what she does. She goes up, grabs the pamphlet, and says, I'm taking this one home, and puts her own in the doorway. You know, in the age of Ring, Laura, when every doorbell has a candid camera on it, it's best not to steal your opponent's paraphernalia. Just leave it there and put them side by side. Let the voter
It's kind of like the UPS truck, those people who follow the UPS truck, the Prime, the Amazon Prime. Oh, it's their Prime choice of someone else's packages.
Do you remember that video from last week? It was a postal worker who dropped the post office and he urinated on the front porch, and they caught it all on camera. Don't do bad things on other people's porches. Leave their porches alone.
This is frightening.
I have to tell you about this, some big news, serious news, Laura.
Yep.
The attorneys general of D.C. and Virginia have opened up investigations into the clergy sex abuse crisis in the Catholic Church. Of course, it's a global phenomenon now. As of tonight, there are 14 states conducting active inquiries into this abuse. Now, I recently sat down with Cardinal Gerhard Mueller. He is the former head of the Vatican Doctrinal Office, the second most powerful man in Rome, responsible for prosecuting clergy abuse cases for the entire church. Mueller was fired late last year by the Pope, which we discussed. Watch. He removed you, according to reports, because you were too tough, too insistent on tribunals and penalties for these priestly offenders. Is there any truth to that?
But he gave no explanation. But some of his friends around him, they attacked me to be a hardliner in these cases. But I think the only possibility to react of the church must be very clear in favor of the victims, and we must be here hardliners.
He was a hardliner and was on the side of victims. According to reports, the Pope and some of his friends stopped investigations of cardinals in England and elsewhere and rescinded penalties for priests found guilty of this. If you want to know why the sex abuse crisis is engulfing the church, this might be part of the reason, a failure to prosecute these offenders.
Well, the Pope pulled him off duty. Very
possibly. Quite possibly.
Well, seems to me that's what he just told you.
It needs to be explored.
Yeah, I like him, by the way.
Yeah,
I like
do
him
too.
a lot.
I'm going to be back later. We're going to talk about Mega Millions and why you lost.
What? Thank you, Raymond. Fresh off the Florida gubernatorial debate, Congressman Ron DeSantis is here next on his strategy to catch up. The polls are very tight, though, now in Florida, and plus his reaction to the latest controversy surrounding his Democratic challenger, Andrew Gillum, and that Hamilton performance. Stay there.
Immigration and Border Control has an important job to do, and we ought to empower them to do that job, which is why we propose moving the agency inside of the Department of Justice, which obviously already oversees 4 agencies.
Why would you allow your dislike for the president to knowingly put communities at risk?
Congressman DeSantis is looking for more moments like that down the home stretch as he looks to make up what is now about a 6-point deficit in the Real Clear Politics average versus his opponent, Tallahassee Mayor and uber-liberal Andrew Gillum. Joining me now with how he might do that is Florida Congressman, gubernatorial candidate Ron DeSantis. Congressman, thanks for being here. Now, we invited Mayor Gillum on the program, but he politely declined. So how do you close the gap in these polls at this point?
Well, I'm not worried about polls. I'm worried about votes. And, we've had a very good showing. We're turning out the voters we need to. We're going to continue to do it. My primary average when I won the primary was 15 points off. It was off for Gillum. So I definitely do not go by media polls. I go by our polling, our targeting, and everything's going in a good direction. And I think the reason is because you have a candidate like Andrew He's running on abolishing ICE. He said last debate he would not cooperate with ICE at all. And so, you know, if you have somebody who's a criminal illegal, we want to get them out. You have to be able to do that. He also is embroiled in this ethics scandal because he lied about it on Sunday night. He said that he pays for everything, has never gotten anything for free. Well, then documents come out 2 days later showing he got a $1,000 ticket to Hamilton, this play, from an undercover FBI agent posing as a contractor with business before the city. But the documents also showed he got a $1,000 stay at a villa in Costa Rica with these lobbyists who were trying to get a contract through the city of Tallahassee. And guess what? Yeah. They helped arrange the Hamilton. They helped arrange the Costa Rica, pay for it. And then Andrew Gillum gives them a $2 million contract to build a restaurant in Tallahassee. That is the essence of corruption.
Well, in Hamilton, it's like it's nice to have Washington on your side. It's nice to have the real estate developer on your side. Or it's nice to have Mayor Gillum on your side. Congressman Mayor Gillum responded tonight saying this was all a distraction, ethical concerns, whether he lied. And it was last night, actually. Let's watch.
The Republicans obviously want to distract. The goal is obviously to use my candidacy as a way to reinforce, frankly, stereotypes about black men. We're sick of racist attacks. We're sick of bigoted attacks. We're sick of divisive language and strategy.
Okay, so that was his response. In other words, it's kind of all racially charged, maybe even racist.
Laura, it's not about black or white. It's about right or wrong. And the fact of the matter is, when you're taking gifts from an undercover FBI agent, that's wrong. When you're taking gifts from lobbyists, that's wrong, and it does violate Florida law. But then when you give them what they were looking for, this $2 million, you know, that's the essence of kind of a quid pro quo thing, and it's obviously wrong to lie about it, and lie about it. And he was indignant on Sunday night. He said, oh, I'm a grown man. I pay for everything myself. Well, and then it turns out he doesn't pay for very much that we've seen in these documents. And so I think that he realizes he got caught with his hand in the cookie jar. He realizes he's been lying. And think about this, Laura. He still says, oh, I've not been under FBI investigation. If he's not under investigation, why would an undercover agent be giving him a $1,000 ticket to Hamilton? Of course he's under investigation.
He took it up a notch tonight in the debate with you and responding to the same charges and the concern about getting free stuff from agents posing as this developer. Let's watch.
My grandmother used to say a hit dog will holler, and it hollered through this room. Mr. DeSantis has spoken. First of all, he's got neo-Nazis helping him out in this state. He has spoken at racist conferences. I'm not calling Mr. DeSantis a racist. I'm simply saying the racists believe he's a racist.
That's an old trick. The left does it a lot. I mean, the communists believe he's a communist. You know, you can play that game all day long. But he's made this a racial issue. So every time you raise a question about his ethics, his brother is now in investigation, right, Marcus, for maybe voting illegally, and now this clearly is an FBI investigation ongoing. Well, it's racist to mention that. So how are you to debate him if every inconvenient fact becomes a charge of racism, Congressman?
Well, I mean, I think what he's doing is turning off voters. I mean, the fact of the matter is he's a career politician. He's been in office since he was 22, never had a job outside of politics, and he acts like one. He doesn't accept responsibility for anything. He always looks to pass the blame to somebody else. And so that's really what he's doing here. He's trying to divert away from the fact that he's running on a radical agenda that Floridians don't want, and he's embroiled in a corruption scandal that he's been lying about for months and has now got caught red-handed. So that's just the reality. And look, voters see right through what he's doing.
He made a big deal at the first debate, we're almost out of time, about you get support from the NRA. Doesn't he get support from Planned Parenthood and all these leftist groups that are responsible for the snuffing out hundreds of thousands of lives every year? I mean, right?
Yeah, exactly. And he says, I will believe in science. Well, he doesn't believe in science when it comes to right to life, I'll tell you that.
Fantastic. And thanks so much, Congressman, for coming on tonight. Again, we did invite the mayor on. We wanted both of your perspectives, but he didn't get back to us. So we appreciate it. And after President Trump said he was a proud nationalist, it suddenly became okay for his opponents to call him Hitler. Well, a professor who just so happens to be the foremost scholar on nationalism, who happens to be Jewish, is here to react next.
I watch enough History Channel to know that they cheered at Hitler too. I mean, nationalism isn't divorced from the capacity to cheer a crowd.
It reminds me of the kinds of words that came from people like Hitler, who thought that in Germany he was a nationalist.
Well, those slanderous comments leveled against President Trump after he dared to say he was proud to be a nationalist. So what is nationalism? What's it all about? Israeli philosopher Horam Hazony wrote recently, "It's a mistake to think of nationalism as an inherently regressive or destructive political force. In fact, nationalism was the engine that established modern political liberty, and it has been a spur to diversity among nations." And Yoram, whose book, The Virtue of Nationalism, that came out last month, joins me now. Thanks so much for being here. Loved your piece. Now, given what we just read that you wrote, obviously, how do you react to the proponents of nationalism being linked to Adolf Hitler today?
Oh, it's despicable, obviously. I mean, really a disgrace. I think the people who are appearing on those clips simply, the best face that you can put on it is that they're just ignorant. They don't know the first thing about nationalism, and they might not know much more about Adolf Hitler other than what they saw in a clip on the History Channel, as we heard. And with that, they feel equipped to go out and smear people who have nothing to do with Hitler with this kind of smear. They should just be ashamed of themselves.
I don't even know how any of them are on television, frankly. I mean, that is perpetuating a fraud upon the viewing public, and it's historically ignorant, completely out of place. And Yoram, the point about nationalism that President Trump actually made tonight again in Wisconsin, he said, well, what he views as the globalist understanding is you put the interests of the global community ahead of your own people's. That's what he's getting at, and that's what a lot of us saw happening over the last 20 plus years or so, which led to the rise of China and other strife across the globe. And meanwhile, America got weaker, less powerful, less influential, certainly under Obama.
I think President Trump is exactly right on this. The confrontation between globalists and nationalists is the great political issue of our age. And the truth is that every political leader should really be taking a stand. I mean, there's nothing more important than this question of how we're going to order the political world. And President Trump, he told us where he stands. Every one of us is going to have to take